to focus on surviving or thriving in our first day of classes. Two important topics we're talking about is reaching out to your students before the first day. Obviously, they cannot find us in our classrooms, so we need to let them know how to find us and find the course materials. And there's a lot of good information. There's some links in that agenda, and two of the panels will be specifically addressing some ideas and strategies for contacting students ahead. Also in the agenda, there's some important information about your rosters and contacting students that is actually quite important in terms of how to make sure that stays up to date. And then the next four panelists will talk about strategies for having an effective and engaging first day of class. And I think some people are teaching synchronously, some asynchronously, and using different platforms. So we're not going to get into super nitty gritty on the technology. If you have really technical questions, put them in the chat and we'll see how we can address them or send you to resources. But really focusing on the big picture, which is the making the connections, creating community, creating an effective environment. So I know we'll hear a lot of great ideas, and we're going to start off with, let's get my agenda here, with Amanda.
Oh, may I do some greetings first, Shelley?
Oh, yes, I should ask the provost to greet us, of course.
All right.
Provost Brown, please do.
All right, so hi everyone. It's so nice to see so many of your faces again. Just a show of hands, how many of you, is this going to be the first time you walk into a class? You will not be walking into a classroom on the first day of teaching. Yeah, probably most of you, yes. So, you know, this is our new challenge for many of you. It's a new challenge for the students. And I want to thank you all for participating today, because it shows your commitment to your students and trying to give them the best education that I can. You know, I also want to thank Professor Shelley Smith and Marianne Beal for organizing this, and Mo Domrat, who also did some of the, you know, behind the scenes to make this a success. And thanks also to the panelists. We really appreciate you donating your time to help your colleagues. Just going to give you a quick couple of things that are going on, you know, to help students in addition to the good work that you're doing. The college has launched a new orientation online for students. Many of the departments are having a new student connection, their orientation online for the first time. There's going to be a new City Tech Guide that's been released. The college is loaning iPads, Chromebooks, and laptops to students that need it. Over 500 students with economic hardships have received funds, and the departments are doing outreach calls to try to help students solve problems so that they could continue their education. And all of you are in the front lines of helping our students succeed and reach their goals. And thank you all. And now time for the panel presentation. I'm looking forward to it as you are.
Okay, thank you very much, Pam. So Amanda, there's so many people I can't see anyone, but I think Amanda Lee Allman from psychology is up first.
Hi, thank you. Can everyone hear me okay? Okay, yes. I see heads nodding. Yes. I suppose I'll start at the beginning. So something I found incredibly useful before the first day of class was to provide students with a survey so I could identify a couple of important things. I wanted to identify students that were going to need a good amount of support. I found it to be useful to identify students without asking outright, because there's a more formal process for that, but identifying students who may have accessibility needs and identified learning disabilities, or those who are in the process of getting those identified. And I wanted to also explore students' experience with being in an online classroom. For some students, it's also their first time taking a course fully online, whether it be synchronous or asynchronous. So prior to the first day of class, I administered a survey using Google Forms. And the first thing I found to be, first piece of information that was hands down the most useful, and many of you, we all know this, is getting an email address that they are going to check. So once you have identified everyone's email address, in addition to their CityTech email address, just creating a group contact in my email list so I could very easily, with one click, email everybody in the classroom with a good degree of certainty that they were all going to get it. So that was one of the first items in this pre-class survey that I created. The next thing I did was just have them check to make sure they have access to Blackboard. Had they logged into Blackboard? Could they see my course? Some basic, to me, basic level things. I provided them information to the student help desk and that phone number so they can get those issues worked out prior to the first day of things starting up. Something I found important in this survey was for them to understand what I meant when I said the word technology, because I would ask them about their familiarity with technology. So when I talked about, you know, going fully online, I laid out to them, this included using a computer or a mobile device or an iPad, having access to the internet, being able to work different features within Blackboard, streaming videos either through YouTube or either through our library. I use Canopy as a really good film database, so making sure they were able to do that. Making sure they had access to a document camera, so explaining to students that if they can't scan things or if things are not uploading, identifying ways that they can use their telephone to take pictures and create PDFs for submission. If they could see video and audio recordings. Something else I found useful was creating subtitles in the lectures I had recorded or were giving, and that was something that was identified to me, especially students who do not speak the same language that I do, that are not fluent in English, or those who may have hearing concerns, and that could be any of us on any given day. So I thought that was something really important. So I asked them about these things. They had printers, scanners, what types of software programs they had. One thing I learned is that many of our students are not using Microsoft Office, even though they may have access to that for free. A lot of them are using free online versions of Microsoft to create Word documents. All of this information was really helpful, especially before the first day of class, so I knew how to successfully set up my course. When it came to identifying students who might have needs in terms of accessibility, I knew how to create tests and offer extended times to those individuals. Something else I realized is that when I was recording a PowerPoint presentation, saving it and sending it as a PowerPoint, as a recorded PowerPoint, is not useful because you need to view it within PowerPoint. So I learned very quickly that I would need to take the time to take any recorded lectures I had and turned them into MP4 files. I ended up making my own YouTube channel, so when students needed to watch a recorded lecture, they could just see it on YouTube, because that's a really solid link. They can see it on their phone, they can see it, you can watch YouTube videos just about any place. So that was something else that was identified in terms of what types of things would I have to be translating in terms of software usage, what do I mean when I say technology, all before the first day, or else very quickly you'll lose a lot of time in the course trying to figure these things out. Many students do not have access to a computer at home. I found a lot of them were using computers at a friend's or a neighbor's. And more important than just access to a computer was access to Wi-Fi. So I also learned that a lot of students relied on public spaces to get internet access. I got a little bit of historical background about students. I noted this earlier. Had they been in online classes in the past? And I wanted to know about their efficacy. How successful did they feel they were in this online environment? So I could really have a sense of how I needed to prepare myself and present my materials to them. So by getting together, their history, their historical use of online materials, what type of access they had. One other thing other component to this survey that I asked is how much time did they expect to spend on the course? When I was an undergraduate student, I was always told that it was the number of course credits you were taking times 2. So if I was in a 3-credit class, I would spend 6 hours per week on that class. So that was something that I had always worked by. And then when you go to grad school, you know, you multiply that by 30. When I got a sense of what their expectations were, I really had to, it told me that I needed to be very clear in telling students how I expect them to spend their time. I think students love the accessibility that a fully online class offers them, but they are not all students, especially in the lower level classes, really have that time management piece figured out just yet. So being very clear in how I expect them to use the time was incredibly helpful. The more preparation that I did before the first day of class, the more I got out of them, you know, throughout the week. So really expressing to them that our class time will be just that, you know, 2.5 hours per week spent on class, but the additional materials I provided to them, that they could expect that to take an additional 3 to 3.5 hours. And that was something useful. So students really knew what they were getting into. So moving beyond just the survey prior to the first day, and that's something I'm more than happy to share with folks. It's a Google form. I have it saved as a PDF that I can share. I read through some of the questions that were presented, and a little specific, I think that's something that can be addressed prior to the first day. There's a question about inclusivity in the classroom. And something that I always use, because I think we're looking for ways for students to have breakout discussions, work in small groups, is I laid out ground rules for discussions in the classroom. For me, I'm within the social sciences department. I teach psychology courses as well as interdisciplinary courses. And it's very centralized around the topic of race and inequality. So for me, having ground rules for discussion that promoted inclusivity was always something really important. But sharing with students the ground rules before the class started, I think, was something that was useful. Things like, you know, avoid using they and them language and only speak for yourself. Don't assume that any one person is a representative of their group. In a lot of classes, I feel that there's a preponderance of women and maybe only 1 or 2 men in the class. And it's not okay to turn to the men in the classroom and assume that they are the spokesperson for all men. So ground rules like that, like inclusivity and how we should treat one another and be respectful. So that was something I had them read before class, contribute to, and I asked them if there were any additional ground rules that they wanted to add to that. And a lot of it was around Zoom etiquette. They wanted to know, was it okay if I don't show my face, whether it's Zoom or Collaborate, because I've used both. They wanted to know if it was okay if they couldn't show their face. They were mindful of that, how that might be received by other people if they were working in a small group and, you know, 4 out of 5 people you could see and 1 person was hidden. How does that change the dynamic? So I think making students a part of the process helps them feel certain and very clear on what they can expect for what is going to be, and what was a long, this time 15 weeks. A couple other ideas about the platforms I use, I just wanted to address. I really liked Collaborate Ultra within Blackboard because so much of the course was housed in Blackboard. I think students found that very easy to access the live synchronous meetings within the Blackboard platform. But as I mentioned before, I also teach interdisciplinary courses. So whether you're serving as a guest lecturer or, you know, teaching an ID course yourself, it can be difficult to get another City Tech faculty member into the Blackboard Collaborate. You have to go about getting them permissions to be on Blackboard and then having access to that. So for that, I tended to use Zoom. And one thing I noticed is that students do not like hopping around through multiple platforms without fair warning. I think none of us do. So moving forward to this semester, I am going to let them know before the first day of class that they'll be using both Collaborate and Zoom. Let me see, I'm just taking a look at any other notes I might have. One last thing I'll say is that I found this is the first year that I really interacted with my students before the first day of class. It's something I had not done before. And with the distance learning, it was that grace period we had, that week or 2, where I was able to interact with them before the full launch of distance learning. And it's something I had never practiced before. So for many reasons, there are some aspects of this whole experience that I really liked because I did get to reach out to them. And I had never so many students emailed me and so many students utilized office hours. And I attribute part of that to it being, you know, by having the before the first day of class interactions and the survey, I was really modeling the importance of interacting with your professor beyond just the class. So when they see that I'm invested in them, and that there is a very different type of interaction style when you're reaching out to your professor one-on-one or outside of the classroom hours versus what happens inside of the classroom, they were more likely to reach out and schedule office hours with me and ask questions via email. And I was really grateful for that. So I think by engaging with students before the first day of class, you're really just modeling that. I think a lot of times we're trying to convey to students how important office hours are. And, you know, you say things like, you get to see me in a different perspective and you can get a deeper sense of learning and it's not like class time. But it's so much more meaningful when you can show that, saying, look how much we've learned about each other already and class hasn't even begun yet. One last thing, I'll end on this. It's a note I saw, and I think it speaks to one of the questions. I taught an asynchronous class over the summer. And then in the spring, it was a mix of synchronous and asynchronous, again, because it was an ID class with guest lectures. But what I learned is that the first day, and I found this out in my survey as well, students really wanted a home base. So we met live the first day. I think people want to see your face as a professor. They want to know who their professor is. They want to hear them speak. And they want to feel some kind of, I think, comfort. I think normalcy is getting overused. I think it's not normal, but it's something comforting to know that you've laid eyes on your professor, much like that first day of class. So my advice, and again, I'm teaching one of each this semester, is the first day, be synchronous when possible. And for those enrolled in a fully asynchronous class, knowing that it's not going to be the standard to always meet synchronously, but encouraging them strongly to be present the first day of class, I thought brought a lot of benefits to these difficult times. That's all I have to offer. I'm not sure if we'll be taking questions at the end or directly after each panelist, but thank you.
I have to remember to unmute myself. Yes, we'll take questions after all of the panelists speak. So there may be multiple, questions that are similar. So do put your questions in the chat if you have questions. And thank you. That was a tremendous amount of information. My head is spinning, but we'll I'm sure some of it will get repeated and it'll have a chance to sink in by some of the other panelists. Okay, next up is Mary Sue Donsky from Legal Studies, and she's also going to talk about communicating with students before the first day. Hi, Mary.
Hello, hi. I'm Mary Sue, and I teach in law and paralegal studies. My specialty is estates, trusts, and wills, which is a class about death and dying, which is ghoulish in the best of times, and teaching during a pandemic is, challenging. But at the end of last semester, I offered a modest amount of extra credit to my students for writing me essays, answering a series of prompts about their experience with the transition and how we can make their educational experience better for them online. And I got about 30 responses, and I studied them over the summer. And I wanted to share a couple of the really relevant ones that are very important towards planning for our first day and even what we do before our first day in class. And so the first thing I asked the students was, did you use any online learning materials that were provided by the college? And my students were sophomores and seniors, graduating seniors, and resoundingly they said no, they didn't. And I think that's because they already knew, how to navigate Blackboard and Open Lab, and they were great with the technology of it all. My students didn't have any problem with that. I asked them, did you use the help desk? And I got a great response. She said, I have no idea how to find the help desk. If I were to look for the help desk, I would need help. So that didn't work out so well. So I said, well, did you ask your classmates for help? And that was probably the most important thing I gathered from the essays, was that yes, students do turn to their classmates more than they turn to anybody else. And I got some great responses. For example, a student said, I tried to teach myself how to go on and about by getting classmates' phone numbers and keeping in touch with them. And we would create a group chat to keep everybody updated. Or another one said, I feel as if my classmates really helped me pass the semester. We set up group chats and group calls to help each other with understanding the lessons, and some even did tutoring to help others with their homework. And I had some students that had a lot of regrets that they weren't able to, interact with their classmates outside of class. Somebody said it was harder to communicate and interact with classmates. Sadly, I couldn't ask my classmates for help because I do not have their cell phone numbers and we do not have the same trust with each other. Another one said, I do wish I created closer bonds with some of my classmates while we were in school, so I could have had the opportunity to collaborate with some. So you can see, I got the great sense that when groups form organically outside of class, it's one of the strongest things that can happen. And so I've been thinking a lot about how to do that and facilitate that rather than force groups on them. Because I did get a response that said, students want to be active participants in their education, but in a way that is reasonable. Unlike the professors who are assigning group work during a global pandemic and honestly expecting the class to do it. So then I asked them about platforms, and as faculty, we're all over the place. Everybody seems to have their favorite. And I had one poor student who had 5 classes and she used 5 platforms, 5 different ones. So, I don't know. I use exclusively Blackboard Collaborate. I like it, and I do synchronous teaching because our accrediting body, the ABA, prefers synchronous teaching. They give you a lot less hard a time with that than they would with asynchronous, so I'm sticking with that. I asked the students, well, how do we make life better for you? How do we improve the online experience for you? And they told me, I just want to read you a couple of quotes because they were so strong. One student said, students feel at home when they have a professor who takes the time to learn a little bit about who they are, because sometimes school is the only home they have. And she said, engaging with students, hearing their stories, asking them about how their experience at City Tech could be much better, meaning that we as professors need to do more of that. She said, another student said, it is hard to get a word in when we do online. Plus the human interaction is very missed. I feel like in-person professors get to experience my dynamic and rambunctious attitude, but online I feel muted and invisible. So, the human interaction with the professor is also important. Another student wrote, and I think this is something that it's really, I don't know the answer to it, but I'd love to discuss it if we could, is she said, teachers should also be conscious that many students are embarrassed to show their faces on camera. They may not have a space at home where they feel comfortable to share. So it shouldn't be a problem if a student's camera icon is off. So what I gathered from these surveys is that students want to know that their teachers care about them, that their teachers are approachable, that we're available. That's the most important thing that I think we can convey even before we start classes on the first day. So here's what I did. I prepared a welcome email, and I read a bit about welcome emails, and they say they shouldn't be longer than a page. On mine is about 1.25 pages. Couldn't get it any shorter. And I wanted to set the tone for the semester. I wanted to allay my students' anxieties. I wanted to create some legitimate buzz and interest in my class because honestly, this is horrible to say, but Will's Law has been the same for about 400 years. And over the summer, it's changed a lot because of, the pandemic and the way we practice law has changed a lot. So it's an exciting time to be in the legal field. And I want my students to feel that excitement, even though we're, going through some horrible, sad times. So I wanted to create that buzz. I wanted to give them basic information. Now for me, it's easy because all I use is Blackboard and all my students are enrolled in my class. So you can write one email, you can send it out to everybody and it doesn't seem to be a problem. So I provided a lot of basic information in that email. the date of our first class, the time of our first class, where we're meeting in Blackboard Collaborate, and then a lot of links. Maybe they won't use them, maybe they will, but for Blackboard help, for the help desk, for how to get on your email at CityTech, which students may not know. I don't know. I hope they do. Information about my office hours, which the way I'm going to do it, I'm going to try 3 different things. I'm going to have virtual office hours on the discussion board for public questions that everybody might be interested in. I'm going to do email office hours for students that want to just email me, which I think is the most common preference. And then I'm going to do private appointments and Collaborate, when not during class time, but whenever the student is available and whenever I'm free, we can make private appointments to talk one-on-one. I gave them my syllabus. I gave them my first week's readings before the first week. And I gave them my first assignment that they can start on before class. And my first assignment is, tell me about yourself. And I gave them a series of questions to write an essay, nothing too personal, but about their educational experience, their feelings about online, their feelings about using the webcam, what kind of exams do they prefer, all sorts of questions like that, questions about their professional life. And I think it's a great assignment, because the first question, what's the first question you always get at every job interview for the rest of your life is, tell me about yourself. So we're practicing that. And I made a YouTube video, telling them about me, which I generally haven't done in years, but I made a 7-minute video just telling them about how I got to be a lawyer and how I got to be a professor, and, professional stuff, not too much personal stuff, but, if I'm asking them, they should feel free to know about me as well. Then I stressed over and over and over, I pick my battles, and my battle is, you got to read my email. So I put my email address all over the place. It's everywhere. Everywhere you go, you're going to find my email address. And I encourage them to email me whenever you want. I told them, I'm not doing anything. You can just email me whenever you want. I'll get back to you right away. And then I ended my welcome email with, I don't know if it's a little sappy, but with a paragraph that I wanted them to know that I really do care. And so I'll read it to you. It's really short. I said, I'm really proud to tell you that I didn't lose a single Will student when we transitioned to online learning last semester. Every student made it through this course successfully. I do not intend to lose any of you this semester either. We're in this together, and I want you to succeed. I really hope that you will enjoy my class and learn a lot. I'm looking forward to meeting you next Wednesday, August 26th at 2:30 in Blackboard Collaborate. And I don't know, it's a little sappy, but I think that might be important to be a little more, I'm usually pretty lawyer-like in my classes, but I wanted to be a little more personal this time. And then the other thing I did is I made a welcome video on YouTube, because, they probably want to see what we look like. I mean, they're probably really curious about what does my teacher look like. So I made a 3.5-minute video, again, saying the same stuff with my email and how to navigate Blackboard and what to click and where to go for help. And they put that into a video as well that I posted up on the announcements in Blackboard. So when they go there the first time, they'll have that as well. I'm happy to show it if we have time at the end or something, but those are my ideas, and can't wait to hear what everybody else has to say.
Thank you very much, Mary Sue. That was terrific. Thank you for giving the softer, who knew we would hear the softer side from a lawyer? Thank you so much. Okay, we're going to move on. Everything's sort of overlapping in terms of communicating before the first day of class, so we realize that's going to happen, but we're moving on to the first day of class focus now. And next speaker will be Boris Gelman from physics. Are you there, Boris? I know you're there somewhere. You need to unmute yourself.
Sorry. Hello, everyone. My name is Boris Gelman. I'm from the physics department. So I think we, I was supposed to talk about synchronous versus asynchronous.
That's fine.
Instruction, right? Format. So, so you probably, I don't know how much you got into these different formats of teaching online. So you can have officially it's called synchronous or asynchronous teaching, and so in the format of synchronous teaching, you pretty much follow, you meet on online using either Zoom or Blackboard, Collaborate. So personally, I use Blackboard Collaborate for all my class activities. So you hold lectures. Of course, you have to you know, lectures have to be planned somewhat differently than you would typically lecture in front of the class. You have to be aware of. You should try to be aware of the attention that students pay. So it should still, I still try to have you know, a short presentation using maybe PowerPoints. And then I try to engage students in discussions. So that's, well, and then of course I hold office hours also on Blackboard Collaborative, and I have, you know, I have quizzes and on Blackboard. So in asynchronous mode, although this has to be asynchronous mode, the way I understand it, has to be kind of agreed ahead of time. So there is no fixed time to schedule a lecture. You create various activities such as discussion boards, use of wikis, and you don't have to meet at the prescribed time. You can post, of course, videos with short lectures and similar activities. So again, the way I structure the course, it would be called a combination of synchronous and asynchronous teaching, because I do hold regular classes for the same amount of time that the regular class is scheduled, but I also use discussion boards and wikis to interact with students. Of course, I use emails as well. So what else I wanted to say? Well, of course, everything, as a previous speaker said, requires, you know, that the students are aware what kind of mode you're planning to teach. And so that has to be announced ahead of time. And all these usage of discussion boards, wikis, they have to be explained in details. So for example, if you use a Blackboard, it's good to show maybe to send pictures of your course menu, where you could, where you can point with an arrow where, at least for the first time, students would go to log in, and then during the first meeting, if it's a synchronous class, give again additional explanations and answer students' questions if they have problems to navigate that platform that you're using. Well, I think that's about it. Maybe I can answer questions later on if anybody has them.
Okay, thank you, Boris. And we'll clarify a little bit too with synchronous and asynchronous. I think we'll take that up again afterwards as well. Okay, thank you very much, appreciate it. All right, and our next speaker up is Catherine Gregory from Health Sciences. Catherine.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, great. I teach in the Health Sciences department, and all my courses have been pretty much hybrid since I joined the department in 2015, with one exception, a new course that I taught last spring on social marketing in a healthcare settings. And that was, you know, in the classroom or scheduled to be in the classroom the whole semester. Every time I walk into a classroom for the first time, I know that it maybe at best I will know 5 to 10% of the students who've walked into my my Health Services Management 2 course. And so I hand out, every semester, I hand out index cards at the beginning of the class and I ask students to give me their name, an email where I can find them if they ghost me, their work and volunteer experience, and of course their life goals. Mind you, most of my students, our students are healthcare workers, going to school and working full time. Some of them are caregivers. And when I do the attendance for the first time, I read them if they're not too personal. And so I start building rapport with each student from day one. And I think I foster a safe environment. Students get to find out more about their classmates, and I'm in the process of building rapport. And by the end of the first class, I may not know all of their names, but many of them, and I start to integrate some of their experiences into even that first lecture, and it carries on throughout the semester. So they are aware of me and I'm aware of them, and I think it's a trust building exercise. Last semester, when we migrated to distance learning, I decided to go with asynchronous teaching. Again, largely because we were already immersed in a hybrid setting, but also I did that strategically because our students, the majority of them, were essential healthcare workers on the ground, you know, dealing with the COVID outbreak. So I did that for them as well, but also because I had some students who had Wi-Fi issues. They didn't have the technology accessible to them. So, you know, I did not use Zoom. I did not use Collaborate last semester. I thought going into this semester I was going to be using Zoom, but frankly, I don't like leaving the ecosystem platform. So I'm in all likelihood going to be using Collaborate Ultra. So I'm going to be blending my class. It's going to be part synchronous, part asynchronous. So I've strategically chosen to hold class, you know, the first day, and then 2 weeks later, I'm still following my hybrid schedule in terms of assignments. So in 2 weeks after the first class, I will meet with them again. I feel that I need to provide that extra instruction. I think my assignments are fairly explicit. You know, last semester in February, my students were writing policy papers on how New York City should best approach a COVID pandemic. The very first exercise they do is a root cause analysis of why there's, you know, such a high mortality rate amongst African-American mothers and infants. So I engage them pretty early on with relevant, timely content. I'm probably going to have them do some kind of analysis of you know, the high number of nursing home deaths in Washington State shortly after the outbreak. So, you know, looking at, you know, what fell through, also looking at possibly how other countries have dealt with COVID. So our circumstances are embedded in my curriculum from day one. I feel that I've got to find a way to create that rapport, and I'm debating whether I should just put out a survey beforehand, open-ended, to find out, of course, about their life goals, but also about what accommodations they might need, what kind of technology they need. But I want to be able to communicate with them as I'm, you know, taking attendance, so that there's that initial connection. And that's what I'm wrestling with right now. Just thinking of, I'm so afraid of the technology failing me, or my inability to get everyone on board. Years ago, I taught a graduate online course, and it became at an institution that had really strong tools, but I found that it became a two-tiered group. There were those who had access to the audio and the video, and then there were those who were texting because they could not pull up enough Wi-Fi for audio. And so I'm afraid of something like that happening again. And I think that's why I was so hesitant to use any of the you know, the conference web-based tools initially. But I feel like we've come a long way in just a few months, and I am more confident about this. So that's what I'm wrestling with. I'm integrating relevant content, relevant issues into my curriculum. But I feel like that first day for me is so important, because often I do not know any of the students who walk in, because I'm teaching, you know, the second part of a Management 2 course, or multiple sections of it. Sometimes I'm teaching, you know, legal aspects of healthcare, but I'm not teaching that this semester. So I probably won't know, I don't believe I know any of my students. So that's my biggest concern. I need that connection, and as much as they need it, you know. I think I was highly accommodating regarding deadlines last semester, because so many of my students who are respiratory therapists were working double shifts, and, you know, they were working 24 hours straight. And so I'm willing to be accommodating on that level. I do want to hold on to my assignments, because if that erodes, then the whole thing falls apart. The one other point I wanted to make was that in my class, my students give group presentations, and they also give a final presentation, and there's a debate. So I think for the group project, you know, they're going to present on, you know, a morbidity and how research is conducted on that topic. They will hopefully, you know, present as a group on Collaborate. For the debate, I'm also going to try to hold a debate online here. I hope it goes well. You know, I'm a little nervous, but I think it'll go fine. I think these trainings and these forums really help a lot. And I'm just hearing some really good ideas around what else I need to integrate into my online survey before the first class. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Catherine. Lots more good ideas. It's very helpful to all of us, yeah. And making those connections is so important. We've heard a lot of good things about that. Okay, next up is Mark Noonan from English. Mark.
Hi, everyone. I hope you can hear me.
Yes.
I'm excited to be here. I've heard some great things. My background, I'm from the English department. I've been teaching online hybrids on and off for years and years. I had the opportunity to train for the COREC that's going to be online. That's going to be in the fall. And Caroline Hellman has set up a wonderful online site on OpenLab, which I recommend for anyone teaching OpenLab. I think she's presenting on Friday. And it was really a wonderful opportunity to see what you can do on OpenLab and really be ready for class. I'm going to present something slightly different, but I'm going to make it applicable to teaching students. So I won an NEH grant where I was going to bring 25 faculty to New York City to walk the streets and study the archives under a grant called City of Print. Turned out they couldn't come. I had to make a decision whether to run this institute or to run it online. I chose to do it online, remotely, and I didn't know if it could match. I had done this in 2015, if it could match, being on the feet and meet in person, but it actually exceeded expectations. And while online is obviously is different, but it has its own advantages as well as its own disadvantages. And the one thing I will say is that this is an opportunity. It's an opportunity for CUNY. It's an opportunity for a college of technology to really make this work. And I found, and I'll just briefly walk through the institute and make some points for teaching. That it was really successful, and it proved to me that we all should feel confident that we can deliver this. We can deliver online education with thought and forethought. So I'm going to share with you right now. Can everyone see that? Okay. Yes. Oh, okay. So I want to 3 points. I want to make a point about doing something remotely or online that was formerly in person. Communicate, clarify, and respond. So as soon as I went online, I realized it was important to communicate to all the 25 participants what the site would look like, what it would entail, what the expectations were. So in any case, again, people have reiterated this as well, but email your students before classes start and just tell them, what's to be expected, whether you're going to be on Blackboard, whether you're going to be OpenLab, whether you're going to be synchronous, whether you're going to be asynchronous, right? So communication is so important. And one of the things I ask in my email to students is go and check the site, review the site. So this could be an OpenLab site, this could be a Blackboard site, but this happened, I designed this on Squarespace. And one of the things about sites, it's important to keep them very simple, user friendly. I'm always thinking about how it's being used. A lot of DH people don't think about that. So I had to really test. So this is a very cool looking site, but it's actually very simple to use. So tell your students to check out the site, but keep in mind simplicity. Okay. And the second part of communication is to, and people have mentioned this, introduce yourself. And the best way to introduce yourself is to provide a video. So this was my video where I introduced myself. I also we'll be asking students to introduce themselves in a video. I've used Screencast-O-Matic to tape my videos, and then I upload it to either YouTube or Vimeo. But actually, I actually recommend PowerPoint. The new version of PowerPoint allows you to make videos and to do slideshows. So these are great for both straight videos and also for lectures, and very simple to use. And then you just upload it to Vimeo, which you can then host on Blackboard or OpenLab. I'll just play 2 minutes of my little. Sorry, I just lost it. Welcome everyone. I'm Mark Noonan, director of the NEH Summer Institute, City of Print, New York, and Periodical Press.
There's no audio. We can't hear you.
Yeah, there's no audio.
You can't hear it?
No, can you start from the beginning? No, we can't hear
enable the audio for your video. So if you want to stop sharing and then reshare and click that button.
Yeah, I can barely hear you. Maybe you could turn up the volume. Is there a way to turn up the volume?
I'm actually going to just it's not important. I basically introduce myself. You know, my point is make a nice video where you introduce yourself, you know, for the first day. It should be on your site on the first day. And then ask students to do the same on their own phone. You know, you can tell something about that's interesting about yourself, something about the class. You know, keep it short. But again, I use PowerPoint. You can use Screencast-O-Matic. You know, and also there's a learning curve to getting it down. This video wasn't great. I'll be doing better ones. You know, you know, we're all doing this for the first time in some ways. So just, you know, try things out. You're going to have to practice a little bit. So again, introduce yourself. I'm going to go back to the main site. So communication is really important prior to, and the second part, the second point I want to make a point is just clarify, always be clear. So have a clear syllabus, be clear about your expectations, and with your syllabus, I have found that, you know, we've all moved to online readings, and so, you know, your syllabus, you could have PDFs, but I've found through working with some of my colleagues that it's better to link to readings that are online already rather than PDF, because once again, you don't know the technology that students have, and that is going to be the biggest problem, is the students, you know, not having Wi-Fi, not having privacy, right? And even their technology isn't great. Not to be political, but New York City should have Wi-Fi'd the entire city years ago. You know, it was prevented by the corporations, and all CUNY students a long time ago have been given free laptops. And that's just my little political pitch. So on your site, be very clear. And the last thing I'll mention that's applicable to the classroom, and this was basically a classroom for faculty. The last thing I'm going to point out is make sure there are ways to, you know, good, cool ways to respond. So I'll show you. So if you have a video, no, I didn't mean to play it, sorry. If you have a video, you know, have a discussion box. So you know, the best way, on OpenLab, the best way for students to respond is simply to post a response to a lecture, say, and OpenLab is very, very, very good for that. And also, you'll notice that next to each lecture, which you can respond to, you know, in discussion boxes, is a link to Zoom. So this is a link to Zoom, and you know, Zoom works very well. I need to get into it too much, but you know, you should get a license. There are some, by the way, there are costs that need to be factored in. A Vimeo account, if you want your own Zoom account. So you can do a link to, you can have a consistent link to Zoom throughout your class, and just keep that link consistent. And the other thing you notice, this says Zoom recording, and just like this session is being recorded, that's very important that you record your Zoom recordings, because you want to play that back for students. Some people are synchronous, some people are asynchronous. We weren't even offered the choice. We discovered the English department that we were automatically thrown into asynchronous. So if you're doing synchronous, you know, you could use, you know, Blackboard Collaborative, or you can use Zoom. If you're asynchronous, and I got this from a colleague, I recommend doing a doodle poll early with your students to see if most of them can meet at a particular time. And during office hours, have that on Zoom, and you can discuss the class, you know, things that are going on in the class. And also important, for those students that can't make, quote unquote, the office hours that are on Zoom, if you record all the office hour discussions, the students that, you know, the schedule doesn't work, and I'm talking about asynchronous classes, they can watch it on their own time. So overall, I was, you know, turned something that was supposed to be in person to online, and it worked fabulously. But you really want to make good use of videos, be very clear about many ways that students can respond, and also be sure to tape everything. And in the end, I actually honestly feel that you can do it, and you can do it even better in some ways. And I hope the School of Technology, which we teach at, is going to be the leader, a national leader in digital pedagogy. So I just wanted to share that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mark. Thank you very much. So we have some questions popping up we'll address shortly, but we have one more presenter. That was great, actually. Really good to see examples of a site there. So thank you for that. Last presenter is Sarah Woolley from ComD. Sarah?
Hey, everybody. Can everybody hear me? I can get a thumbs up if you guys can hear me. First thing is, if you need to stand up and stretch for a second or anything, I will not be offended. Feel free. And this is me right now modeling how I relate to my students. I try to, as often as possible, humanize myself and humanize them in an online learning platform. The previous presenters all mentioned various words like rapport or, you know, building ways of getting feedback from students. I know that one of them said something about opportunities to collaborate. And essentially what both we and our students are being robbed of is that feedback loop. And so any chance, you know, so I have a sheet of advice to share with you guys, but my biggest piece of advice is using any opportunity that you can to humanize yourself. Whether this is in your introductory email and the tone of it, it's in your blog posts, it can be, you know, assignments that you do along with them. But right at the very beginning, you know, and I think Professor Gregory was talking about how she spends the first week building that, you know, that rapport by the end of the class, knowing most of the names. And that's definitely how I approach my first day in class. And so what I felt like is the challenge of moving my practice to being online, and I guess the challenge for all of us is to self-reflect and go, what's my teaching style? Like, what am I really, really good at in a classroom? Okay, what am I not so good at? And then, okay, how do I build those things in? How can an online structure mimic and help me to mimic my, you know, my style of teaching online? And I'll share some of the ways that I do that. And then also, because we're online, actually, there are ways that the online structure can help us to, you know, cover up some of the things that might be a little bit more challenging. So a little about who I am, my background. So I teach for communication design. I should have said that initially. And I am an illustrator and a comic book artist, and I teach illustration online now. And my previous experience before being at City Tech is I was an online instructor for another university teaching purely asynchronously. So the move over to, you know, suddenly teaching online for City Tech because of the pandemic was maybe slightly less awful. Just having known a little bit about having taught asynchronously before. And so my approach now is a blend of what I do in the City Tech classroom along with what I learned as an asynchronous instructor. And so firstly, I had the fortune of being asked by Faculty Commons, and let me go ahead and share my screen one moment. Sorry about that. Here we go. Okay, and sorry, guys. I'm just in a little trouble. There we go. Okay, so can everybody see the model course on their screen? Okay, wonderful. And so I was asked to develop a model course over the summer for implementation this fall. And so communication design has been working on the ComD Pedagogy Project. So several instructors have been working all summer long, led by Jenna Spivak, to create several different courses which are already pre-built for faculty members to go ahead and teach online. And so there's a whole list of course templates that can now be adapted, and mine is one of them. And so I'm going to go ahead and show you that particular course template. And so along with what everyone has already told you guys about, you know, having a welcome email, having all of the information students need ahead of time, embedding a survey in there for them to find out their technology needs, all of that. My welcome email mimics the tone of this hello and welcome. And this is also the front page of my course site. Now, in my opinion, I think having a stable online course home is really important. That's my opinion. I think what it builds for faculty, for students, is a sense of having a classroom. And it's a sense of consistency and comfort. So everything that my students will ever need for their course, they will find on this site. So right here, front page, they get hello and welcome, along with a how to navigate the site, any sort of instructions they'd need. And then, you know, similarly, we've been talking about them getting to know you and you getting to know them even before the first day of class. I've given them a link to check out my website, so that if they'd like to find out a little bit more about my experience as an illustrator, they can go ahead and look through my portfolio and look through my past work so they know who I am too. I have a little bit on getting started so that if they're new to OpenLab, they know where to go to find some help, and then questions and answers. And the way that the course is structured, everything is right here for students. So day one and every week after, they find their class right here. So they click on class, they get week 1 class. And I'm purposely using week 1, week 2, week 3, all the way to week 15. Everything is labeled by week because I've found that when I'm not in the classroom, things can get very confusing in terms of what should be read when, what's due when, what deliverables they need. And it could make the website difficult to navigate. So by having everything organized by week, it just makes it that much easier for students. And so this is the week 1 class agenda. This will be shared with them beforehand, and then also their link to the Zoom class will be right here. I use Zoom for my synchronous learning. And this will also give them what they should do before class, and any of the activities. Obviously, we'll go over together the syllabus, but what I wanted to share with you too was the online course structure and the how to navigate this site. So beginning with an online course structure, this is what students can expect each week in the actual Zoom class. We'll do some sort of a warm-up or an icebreaker. Again, some people, I think, feel like icebreakers are a waste of class time. I strongly disagree. I think that it's not just important in the beginning. I think it's important all the way through. The only classes that I probably won't do some sort of a game will be the midterm and the final. Every other, it allows a slow start. You know, if anybody had some train trouble to get in, the internet was cutting in and out, it's a low stress. We build low stakes activities to high stakes activities. And I teach a 3-hour class, so you need things that are a little lighter in the beginning. Nobody needs to be listening to me talk for 3 hours straight. So we do a warm-up or an icebreaker game in the beginning. I really like using breakout rooms for this, and having one person from a breakout room report back. This also then kind of builds that loop of students actually having to use their camera. So I'm not making them do it, but they eventually hopefully self-sort and start to use their camera more without me having to make a directive towards them, because obviously we shouldn't do that. But if it is easier to interact with their peers with their camera on in these games, they tend to leave them on later in the class. I also have, since like I said, my course is both synchronous and asynchronous, I have a weekly discussion topic every week. It's labeled by week, and they participate during the course of the week in the discussion topic. At the end of the class, at the beginning of the first class, then we will reflect back on that discussion topic to begin it. We'll have in-class demos. My lectures are all recorded. So I will both give the lecture, but they're also available for download. And then in the critiques, I give feedback in terms of both real-time feedback on student drawings, as well as students giving peer-to-peer feedback. And on the first day's class, it's really important to establish for them what would be considered an appropriate way of giving class critique and class feedback. This is normally something which needs to be guided really carefully in design courses. However, in an online course, I feel like it's even more vital because people are much more likely to say things that are cutting and unkind when they're not face-to-face. And so giving really strong parameters, like Professor Almond was saying, I found also to be really, really important. So essentially, here are the activities. And I'm gonna go ahead and give you guys a sense of if students wanted to find my lectures, they just click on lecture each week and then their lecture will come up. So it's everything they need is within one place. It's been quite a bit easier for me to do this. I give them an idea of how to navigate the site, and this link is in both the welcome email, it's on the first page, and then it's also part of the lecture. So I think that telling people things, I know it might seem repetitive, but having information in multiple places is a good idea in an online format. So this is pretty clear. This is where your posts go. This is how to find your instructor. I mean, it's pretty simple. And then during my first day lecture, welcome to illustration 1. Again, here's how you're going to navigate the site to be able to do this. And my students are going to be delivering all of their assignments in student posts. So they need to know exactly where everything's going to go. I give them a sense of how, how a critique should be run. I like it or I don't like it judgments, as well as we can talk through the supplies. And this is just in sort of a welcome presentation that's not part of my lecture. And then moving on. So I'll basically be going through introducing each of their weekly discussions. There are links here that take them to what their weekly discussion format should be like. And again, it might seem like too much information. However, my discussions are released the night of the class. They have 7 days to complete the discussion, and then they close the morning of the class. And I go as far as to tell them that they have the full week and reading the whole thread, commenting after checking out any of the materials, not just saying, I read it, not just repeating what another student says. So I really feel like there's a lot of need to train them on how to have a discussion online. And so this sort of first post and first piece of information is something I give them that tells them, okay, twice per discussion is the minimum. And you have to prove you read the person ahead of you to be able to have it count as a discussion. So if you are having your discussions asynchronously, I'd highly recommend giving really strong parameters on what counts as participating. And then moving on, when we get into our lecture, I will be using a combination of PowerPoint, which I just showed you. And then also I'll be trying to do things real time for my students using Photoshop or other software to demo for them. Sometimes I'll be giving them files to be able to participate alongside me with. So for this one, I am demoing for them on the first day a practice of brainstorming and coming up with concept development techniques. And so this doubles as a game. where students are going to get to participate along with me. So we get through the very beginning of the agenda and how the course is going to go, and here's the online structure, and then get to something that's a little bit more fun that they get to participate in a little bit more heavily. So the way that it would work is I would go ahead and I'm going to be sharing. So we're going to be brainstorming a new illustration for Mint Magic Tea. So the thrust is concept development, how to come up with multiple concepts. And this is going to be what they're redesigning, this dated tea box. And the idea is essentially that they have to brainstorm as many words as possible related to mint, magic, and celestial. And so I'm going to go ahead and actually do that with them online in Photoshop, right? And so if it's everything from, say, you know, green, right? And keep going, but I'm going to be asking students to participate in the chat and just start typing in words. And I'm going to frantically try to keep up with them, writing it all out so that they get to help the lecture, have the lecture be more interactive. I kind of would like the idea of having them to just take the mute off and just yell into the camera, but which is what it feels like in a classroom. I don't know how chaotic that would be, but it might be worth the chaos just to have the energy up. But that gives you kind of a sense of how I would be modeling that. And I will be using the same method to be demoing drawing techniques or demoing how to use layers in Photoshop, etc. So it gives them a sense of, okay, on day one, I should maybe have Photoshop open because I might be going ahead and doing something in Photoshop in real time during Zoom. And then towards the end, right, so we went ahead and did this. Their assignment is completely related to the brainstorming techniques. So they have all of their assignments right here. Due next week is always where they're going to find everything. And it's reading for week 1, discussion for week 1, sketchbook exercise for week 1. I build in a sketchbook exercise that is a low stakes activity every week that is just a check mark. And it's, you know, to build a sketchbook practice on its own, but for this one, this particular activity is meant to build a class dynamic. And so this activity is called Meet the Artist. And it's a hashtag that if you put it into Instagram, you're gonna find a million Meet the Artist pages. And so in this one, students are asked to create a Meet the Artist page in their own style about themselves that they'll be sharing in the next class. And this is also where they can talk about what they like to read, what they like to listen to. They can include their pronouns. So this is, and I will be doing one as well. And we'll be sharing this at the beginning of class as, you know, as in small breakout rooms. At the end of that, people will be able to say what they found that they have in common with someone else. And so the challenge, you know, the directive when they share their sketchbook shares is to find someone else that has something in common with you. So that helps to build, that kind of an activity helps to build a sense of both humanity of the professor as well as a class dynamic and a class cohort. Another thing that I'd like to share with you guys before I stop, I have all of my assignments right here. And so this is going to be their first assignment. And it makes sense now why they did that brainstorm with me real time. And so they're going to go ahead and have to do part 1, brainstorming and research. Now, my discipline requires projects be multi-part. And this can be really difficult in an online platform. If they have to wait 6 weeks for feedback with a letter grade, I'm going to lose half my students. And so although that would be more regular for me in a classroom setting, because I could give verbal feedback in a way that I think I would be able to keep them, I had to break up all my assignments into much smaller chunks with deliverables each week so that I could guarantee I wouldn't lose my students. And so each of those deliverables is right here. separated out for them so that, you know, they're able to come to class prepared the next week with it. So I would say one more thing to do is if you have any longer projects, to break them up into smaller pieces. And then another part, in order to complete all the classwork, because there is quite a lot of work happening outside of class, at least 6 hours, there's a ton of reading, there's sketchbook work, etc., and assignments that take quite a lot of time. And so in my last class, Advanced Illustration, when we went online in the middle of the pandemic, students took it upon themselves to figure out ways to do their classworks together. And so, you know, you can see right here, they came up with a Discord chat to have their own online study groups and sketch nights to be able to complete classwork in time. And so this, and at first I tried to participate in these things and I realized I'm not supposed to. They didn't want me there. They want to be with themselves. And sometimes during class time, during lab time, they would chat about things that they watched during, you know, their sketch night. And so they were getting a chance to build that class, you know, that student to student rapport that has nothing to do with us. So they came up with the idea of a Discord chat, and that worked really well for our particular discipline. I don't know it'll work best for everyone else's, but I think the idea of encouraging some sort of a study group or a hang session outside of class time to complete assignments would be a really good thing to do. And that also led them to sharing resources to each other as well. And I think I'm going to go ahead and end it there, and I'll go ahead and put my my advice into the chat. And if anybody wants to contact me at all about using any of these model sites, there's a lot more here that I'd love to talk you guys through, but I'd be happy to share my resources. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you. Let's see. Marianne, do you see anything in the chat, any emergency questions that we need to address in the next 3 minutes?
You know what, there was a couple of questions asking Mark Noonan if you could just give specific details or time and access to the, you mentioned a Friday Open Lab workshop.
Yes, hi. That Shelley could respond to that. She organized that, but Caroline Hellman is giving a short talk on the Open Lab, on her Open Lab site, and I highly recommend it if you use Open Lab. I saw a question about I think it was Martha asked about she still doesn't know the difference between the synchronous versus asynchronous. So if someone could just clarify that again.
Right, so a synchronous class means that there are times listed in CUNY First and the student needs to be available at those times. You have a little more flexibility because you don't have to use those times. So if you're synchronous, you can do asynchronous lessons for sure, but students have committed to be available at those times. If it's asynchronous, they have not committed to be available at any particular time. Does that answer the question, Pam?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, yeah, that's a very good definition. If it's an asynchronous class, you can't tell students they have to be available at a particular time, but you can with a synchronous class. But interestingly, the number of average credits that students are registering for is way up this semester compared to previous semesters. I don't know if it's because students don't need to commute, but they're willing to commit to more classes, and it might just be because of the flexibility, online instruction, or not having to commute. Sure, but it was interesting.
The workshop that Mark referred to is the sister event to this one. We're having 2 panels that are essentially the same, except we have all different people, so you'll be hearing different things. So if you want more, you can sign up for Friday. So that link is in the link that Pam sent out last week, and you should be able to sign up for both. Some people did, and some people were not able to sign up for both. So maybe you send it again with just Friday on it so everyone can, yeah, okay.
Sure.
All right. Okay, anything else urgent that people need to know before they go? We'll hang out here a little while if people want to ask questions, but again, we're definitely going to go through this chat and get back to you. I know there's some questions about the legal issues of recording students.
Right.
Right. You can't really record students without their permission. You can't insist that students turn their cameras on for privacy issues. You can encourage it. And I also had put it in the chat, but in case anyone didn't see it, the university purchased the executive Zoom license plan, which means that any faculty who wants can get the professional Zoom license, which will not limit you to the 40 minutes. So if you want the Zoom license for your teaching, you should reach out to the chair and they can put in a CIS ticket and arrange for you to have that.
One thing regarding recording is I believe if you're recording and then you're posting it to a private Open Lab site, that would be just the students in the class. So I'm not sure about that, but that would seem to be all right, but I'm not sure. We'll check into that unless you know, Pam.
Thank you all. I've got to get off for another call, but thank you.
Yes, thank you very much for being here. I am trying to look in the chat, see if there's anything else anyone desperately wants, but again, I'll stay here. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining us, and thank you especially to the panelists. I think it was extremely valuable for all of us. It certainly was for me. And we'll try to share out some of those resources too to everyone. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.
Good luck. Good luck, everyone.